I'm Mike Duncan. Now, coming up a little later on this month, June 20th, 21st, and 22nd, is Moses Neimer's Ideacity 2018, this year called Worlds in Collision. All kinds of amazing speakers. One of them on Friday, June 22nd, is award-winning Canadian filmmaker, photographer, author, multimedia artist, Dianne Whalen. She's been to Mount Everest, created a documentary film, 40 Days at Base Camp, explored the high Arctic in this land, and is on a solo epic journey in 500 days in the wild as she tries to hike and film the longest trail in the world, which, my friends, is here in Canada. And Dianne Whalen joins me on the phone from Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Let me ask you this first, right off the top.
Okay.
Where did you get the bug to do these kinds of things?
I know. Well, I mean, even as a little kid, I was always intrigued by adventures. You know, you get a copy of The Hobbit in your hand at the age of 12, and it's like off you go on your own hero's journey. You know, so I like journey films. You know, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
And it's really, documentary filmmaking is a synthesis of all my passions as a storyteller and as a person who loves nature. So I come by it honestly, Mike.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. So here you are exploring the Trans-Canada Trail.
Mm-hmm.
How far have you got? You haven't done the whole thing yet?
No, I haven't.
It's still 2 years out?
Yeah, I still have 2 years to go. It'll be 3 years as of July 1st that I began the journey in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I knew when I began that it was going to take me longer than 500 days.
Right.
My last film was called 40 Days at Base Camp, and although we did spend 40 days at Base Camp shooting the film, there was another meaning for that name. You know, like 40 days in every religion in the world is a time of self-reflection.
Right.
So I like that sort of. And so with 500 days in the wild, I knew when I began this journey in 2015 that Canada would be celebrating its 150th birthday in 2017. And I love this country, I love this land, but I also know that Canada is a small chapter in the story of this land. So I thought it would be a great time to do this journey and to pay my respects to the ancestors of this land.
Right.
As my own act of reconciliation.
Right.
And that's what it's been.
And you have some Native in your background, correct?
I do, yeah. I mean, my mother's Acadian, and her descendants came to Canada in the 1600s, landed on the shores of Nova Scotia, and really began at that time. You know, the first boat only had men on it.
Wow.
So if you were and they waited for the boat, you know,
Yikes.
to bring the women. So, you know, I think right from the beginning, when her ancestors, my mother's ancestors, came to this land, it became a mix of the two cultures, the French and the Mi'kmaq. So, definitely, I think most of us, there are a lot of people with mixed blood whose ancestors have been here for a long time. But, you know, I've also enjoyed all the privileges of being a white woman in our culture in terms of education. And that's another thing that, you know, I try to remember every day when I'm out on the trail in the morning. I was taught by a Haida healer how to smudge and hold space, and then I try to remember all the murdered and missing women out, Indigenous women, and as my sisters and as daughters of this land, and and I guess that's what I mean about a journey of reconciliation as well, you know, and that is how we might reflect on where we've been and how we might look at how we might move forward. And for me, when I came back from Mount Everest and I finished that film, the world had stopped making sense to me on so many levels. I mean, we talk about ecological destruction, and we talk about, you know, climate change and rising seas, and yet we're still, you know, nothing really changes, right? It's like sometime I remember as a kid, you know, a fisherman once said to me, "We used to live in a society, and now we live in an economy." And so I thought, well, it's really interesting, you know.
Yeah.
So when I began the journey, the idea would be that I was sort of on a quest for lost wisdom. And, you know, 500 years ago when settlers came, it was all about finding furs and finding resources and that kind of thing. I'm kind of doing that journey all over again, like First Contact, take 2.
Right.
But this time I've come just to learn. And learn the old way. I've got 8 years of university education, but I'm in kindergarten in the old way right now.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Connecting to some really old wisdom on this land.
I was going to ask you. I mean, you're not quite through this, but what is the biggest thing you've learned so far?
Oh gosh, Mike, there's so much. I mean, when I left, I thought I was, for instance, just in the keeping on the theme of traditional wisdom. When I left, I thought traveling the old way was the fact that I was going to be snowshoeing and paddling. 7,000 kilometers of this journey's paddling.
Wow.
So snowshoeing, paddling, hiking, and mountain bike riding when I can. And so I thought, I'm not using an engine. I'm traveling the old way. I'm going to be camping. And then I got to Cape Breton, and I spent time with some Mi'kmaq elders. And Danny Paul, one of the elders I was talking with, he said, Dianne, you're not really traveling the old way. The old way isn't the method that you travel. It's what you carry in your heart while you're traveling. So when our ancestors made these long journeys, every step that we made while we were in the forest, we were like, the earth is sacred, the earth is sacred.
Right.
When we were on the waters, paddling the rivers and the lakes, with each stroke, it was, the water is sacred. I went, oh, wow, okay. And so I began doing that on my journey. And I realized, wow, what an empowering way not to be afraid. Because it completely changed your perception. I mean, and you're making a very different connection to the landscape, and to everything that's living out there. And I encourage your listeners someday when you're taking a walk in the forest, try it out. Just get into a mantra of saying, the earth is sacred with every step, and watch how the greens become more vibrant, and how your sense of connection to that space changes. And, thought becomes deed, and deed becomes destiny. It all begins with an idea, which is what makes Ideacity so fascinating, right?
Beautiful tie-in. I love that.
Because, ideas are seeds. And when you put something in fertile soil, they grow. And there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And I believe that we are living through a time of change right now, and it's been really exciting reconnecting to some of those ideas.
Have you inspired anyone on your journey? I'm sure you have. You must have.
I think I have. I know I have been inspired myself on this journey.
For sure.
Almost every day by people that you meet. I mean, and it's not the people that achieve great things. I mean, the people that really make this world worth living in are kind people. That's one of the greatest lessons I've learned on this journey, too, is it's sometimes easy when you're watching the news to think that you're living in a world that's just full of sociopaths.
Yeah.
But it's not. Turn off your TV, go outside, because the world is actually not that at all. See, I took journalism, and so I get how it works. If it feeds, it leads. But that's not a reflection of reality,
Exactly.
And, if you are filled with fear, and I'll tell you a little story. Do I have time for this kind of?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And you can cut me off. All right, Mike. But I'm in Nova Scotia. This is near the beginning of my journey. I've come, and it's November, and I find myself in the forest. I'm lost, and I'm in a wicked rainstorm. Trees are like snapping, friggin' everything is happening. The ground is becoming a river.
Oh, no.
It's almost 5 o'clock. I haven't seen anybody in a couple of days. I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, I realize, like, you're in some deep trouble here. And off in the distance, I see a little light approaching me. And you think, okay, I should be happy. Like, there's human beings out here somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm filled with fear. I'm a woman. I'm alone. And who the heck is this, right?
Yeah.
So up pulls this little side-by-side car. 2 hunters are in it, and they're in full camouflage gear. They've got a bottle of rum. They've got their guns. And I'm like, if you're a woman at this point, there's an alarm going off in your head, right? Like, Well, I didn't trust them, but it had nothing to do with them. I was already in a state of fear. So everything I was interpreting was through that perception of a state of fear. And I'll just cut to the end of the story right away, which is that they were nice men who saved my butt. I ended up going back to their hunter's cabin with them. We ate some deer meat, smoked some cigars, and the next day they put me back on the trail.
Fantastic.
Right? They were kind men. They were fathers. They were brothers. They were, sons. And so I guess the moral of the story is simply that I was reminded that if you are in a state of fear, everything that you are going to perceive is from that state of fear.
Yeah.
That is the problem with filling people with fear, right?
Right, yeah.
Right? Is that we don't trust each other anymore, right?
So true.
One of the greatest things is I've been on this trail for 3 years, and the only thing I have met on this land is human kindness.
Beautiful.
I am very vulnerable. I'm not wielding weapons around. I'm not at all. I'm an artist. I'm carrying a camera. So I am meeting, all I've met are kind people.
Well, I certainly hope you continue to meet kind people and that kindness is reflected back to you when you speak at Ideacity this year.
Thank you. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Been speaking with award-winning Canadian adventure filmmaker, photographer, author, multimedia artist Dianne Whalen. She will be at Ideacity, Moses Znaimer's Ideacity conference, on June 22nd. The whole conference runs from the 20th to the 22nd at beautiful Kerner Hall. To get more information, go to ideacity.ca.